Have you ever noticed how a perfectly ordinary afternoon can suddenly feel incredibly heavy? You're just sitting there, maybe folding laundry, watching rain hit the window, or listening to the hum of the refrigerator. And out of nowhere, a wave of profound loneliness hits your chest. It's not because of anything happening right now. It's an old echo. It is the feeling of the child you used to be, sitting in a quiet room, realizing that nobody is coming to check on them. Think about what that room looked like. Maybe it was your actual childhood bedroom, with posters on the wall and toys scattered across the carpet. Or maybe it was a corner of the living room, or a spot on the kitchen floor where you tried to make yourself as small as possible. In that space, you learned to breathe softly. You learned to keep your thoughts to yourself because the adults outside that door were too busy, too tired, too angry, or simply too overwhelmed by their own lives to walk in and ask you how your day was. You sat there waiting, listening to the muffled sounds of footsteps down the hallway, hoping they would stop at your door. But the footsteps always kept going past. As the hours turned into days and the days into years, a quiet realization settled deep into your bones. If I don't take care of myself, nobody else will. You became an expert at soothing your own tears. You tucked yourself into bed. You processed big, confusing adult emotions with a mind that was still so small, doing your absolute best to make sense of a world that felt indifferent to your pain. And eventually, you grew up. You moved out of that house, left that town, and built a completely new life. You thought that by leaving the physical house behind, you were leaving the loneliness behind too. But the truth is, we carry that quiet room inside us wherever we go. It lives in the pit of your stomach when someone forgets to reply to your message. It lives in the tight, defensive posture your body takes when you think you've made a mistake. It is present every single time you feel the urgent need to hide your true feelings, because you are terrified that if you show your vulnerability, people will look away. The child you were is still sitting in that exact same room, still waiting, still listening for the sound of approaching footsteps. They don't know that decades have passed. They don't know that you survived. They just know the silence. Healing doesn't mean pretending that room never existed. It doesn't mean forcing yourself to just get over it because it happened a long time ago. Healing begins the moment you stop running away from that silence. It begins when you decide to turn around, walk back down that old, familiar hallway of your memory, and finally, open the door yourself. You are the only one who can go back there. You are the only one who can bridge the gap between the past and the present. Before we dive deep into this space together, I want to ask you to do something small, but incredibly powerful. It is a way of signaling to your inner self that things are different now. Take a slow, deep breath. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Feel the weight of your feet firmly planted on the floor beneath you. And down in the comments, leave a simple affirmation. I am here now, and I am listening. Let this be your anchor for today. Let it be a gentle promise to that younger version of you who spent so long being invisible. By typing those words, you are telling that kid that they don't have to wait in the dark anymore. You are letting them know that someone has finally noticed the silence, and that this time, someone is coming to check on them. Let it be the moment you finally knock on that closed door, take a seat right next to them on the floor, and say, "I've got you." When you grow up in an environment where your emotional world goes entirely unnoticed, you learn a dangerous and heartbreaking lesson very early on. Your needs are a burden. You look around at the adults who are supposed to protect you, and you see their stress, their exhaustion, or their unavailability. Without anyone telling you to do it, your young mind makes a quiet compromise. You decide that the only way to keep yourself safe and the only way to be loved is to never need anything from anyone. You start building an invisible architecture of extreme self-reliance, brick by brick, wrapping it around your heart like armor. You become the child who handles everything. You do your homework without being asked. You fix your own snacks. And you learn how to swallow your bad days so you don't add to the noise in the house. You become the person who never asks for help, the one who fixes everyone else's problems, the one who always says, "Don't worry about me, I'm fine." You wear your independence like a badge of honor, and the world praises you for it. They call you mature beyond your years, strong and resilient. But they don't see the heavy cost of that strength. They don't see that underneath that capable exterior is just a frightened child who believes that if they stop performing, if they drop the ball even once, they will be completely abandoned. Think about how this survival mechanism shows up in your adult life today. It isn't just about being independent. It is a deep-seated anxiety that manifests in your everyday routines. Maybe it's the way you compulsively reassure your manager that a massive project is entirely under control, even when you are drowning in the workload, working late into the night, and skipping meals just to prove you can do it alone. You are terrified to say, "I need help," because to you, needing help feels like a confession of failure. Or think about how it affects your relationships. When a friend asks you how you are doing after a difficult breakup, a loss, or a painful disappointment, your throat tightens. Instead of leaning on them, you immediately pivot the conversation back to their life, shielding your own bruises from view. You become the ultimate listener, the rock for everyone else, but you never let anyone be a rock for you. If someone tries to do something nice for you, or offers to take care of a small task, you might feel an intense wave of discomfort, or even guilt. You immediately feel the need to pay them back, to balance the scales right away, because dependency feels incredibly unsafe. This invisible architecture makes you feel like an island. You are surrounded by people who love you, yet you feel completely alone because you never let them behind the walls. You learned to be independent, not because you wanted to be, but because it felt like your only choice for survival. You built these walls to keep out the pain of being ignored. But those same walls are now keeping out the love, care, and support that you so desperately deserve. Every single time you refuse to delegate a task, every time you hide your tears because you don't want to be a bother, and every time you suffer in silence, you are still operating from that old architectural blueprint. You are still trying to protect that little kid who had to be their own parent. But you don't have to live in a fortress anymore. Healing means realizing that it is okay to let the walls crumble, just a little bit. It means recognizing that your needs are not a burden. They are simply a part of being human. And it is safe to finally let someone carry the weight with you. There is a profound, aching difference between being taken care of and being truly seen. This is one of the hardest things to reconcile as an adult, because when you look back, your childhood might look completely fine on the surface. You might have had a roof over your head, clean clothes to wear, and a warm dinner on the table every single night. On paper, your physical needs were met. There were no loud emergencies, no obvious crises, nothing that would make an outsider look at your family and worry. But beneath that calm surface, there was a vast, quiet emptiness. No one ever sat on the edge of your bed at the end of a long day, looked into your eyes, and asked, "How did that argument at school make you feel?" No one ever noticed the quiet, subtle ways you withdrew into yourself when you were overwhelmed, or how you stopped talking about your passions because no one seemed to be listening. You were physically present, but emotionally, you were invisible. The famous psychologist Carl Jung once wrote, "The most damaging thing in the life of a child is the unlived life of the parent." When the adults around you are entirely consumed by their own unresolved stress, their own unfulfilled ambitions, their own financial worries, or their own emotional exhaustion, they simply do not have the bandwidth to look at you. They are surviving, moving through the motions of parenthood like ghosts in the hallway, because they cannot connect with their own deeper feelings. They cannot connect with yours. And so, you learn to blend into the wallpaper. You become small, quiet, and hyper-vigilant, constantly reading the temperature of the room just to stay safe. You learn to predict their moods by the sound of their footsteps or the way they close the front door, adjusting your own presence so you never take up too much space or demand too much attention. This is the shadow of what was missing. It is the trauma of the empty space. We live in a world that only recognizes harm when it leaves a visible mark, but the absence of emotional validation leaves a scar that is just as deep, even if it cannot be seen. As a child, you didn't have the words to understand this. You couldn't look at your overwhelmed parents and think, they are just dealing with their own limitations. Instead, a child's mind always internalizes the absence. You came to a devastating conclusion. If no one is looking at me, it must be because I am not worth looking at. Think about how that shadow stretches into your adult life today. It shows up as a persistent, lingering feeling that you are somehow fundamentally flawed or unlovable, no matter how much success you achieve or how many people love you. It shows up when you are in a room full of friends, but still feel an agonizing sense of loneliness, because you are convinced that if they truly knew the real you, the vulnerable hurting you, they would lose interest. You become hypersensitive to any shift in someone's tone of voice or facial expression, immediately assuming you did something wrong. You are still that little kid standing in the living room, trying desperately to figure out what you need to do or who you need to be, just to get someone to look up and notice that you are there. Healing begins when you realize the emptiness wasn't your fault. The lack of attention wasn't a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of their empty cup. We often think trauma only belongs to loud, chaotic events. We look for the big explosions, the shouting matches, or the undeniable moments of crisis to justify our pain. But some of the deepest, most enduring wounds come from the complete absence of things. The hugs that weren't given, the conversations that never happened, the validation that was always just out of reach. These absences leave quiet echoes that bounce around the walls of your mind, dictating your behavior, your relationships, and your self-worth, decades after you have grown up and left that childhood home behind. An echo is a strange thing. It is a sound that repeats long after the original voice has gone silent. When you experience emotional neglect as a child, the lack of reassurance creates an echo that tells you that your voice doesn't matter, that your pain isn't real, and that you must constantly earn your right to exist. You carry these unspoken rules into adulthood, moving through the world with a hyper-awareness of everyone else's needs while completely abandoning your own. You become an expert at reading people, anticipating their discomfort, and smoothing things over before anyone else can feel a ripple of tension, all while your own heart is screaming out for comfort. Consider the way you react when someone offers you a genuine, unconditional compliment or a simple act of kindness today. Do you immediately deflect it? Do you find yourself nervously laughing it off, making a self-deprecating joke, or quickly shifting the spotlight onto the other person? Do you find yourself over-explaining your worth, or feeling an intense, sudden urge to prove you deserve to occupy space in the room? That reaction is the echo. It is the little kid inside you trying to figure out if it is finally safe to be noticed, or if the other shoe is about to drop. Because you were never given a baseline of unconditional love, you assume every good thing comes with a catch, a price tag, or an expiration date. Think about how this manifests when you try to speak up for yourself. When someone hurts your feelings or crosses a boundary, you might find that your throat completely locks up. You want to speak. You want to say, "That wasn't okay." But the fear of causing a conflict or being met with a cold, dismissive shoulder is so paralyzing that you choose to stay silent instead. You swallow the hurt, pretending it didn't bother you, and you let the echo win. The echo tells you that making waves will only lead to rejection. Because when you were young, expressing your hurt didn't bring comfort. It brought silence, irritation, or abandonment. Unpacking these echoes means slowing down enough to recognize that the critical, anxious voices in your head do not belong to your adult self. They are the internalized voices of an environment that didn't have room for your emotions. When you feel that deep, familiar ache of unworthiness, or that urge to over-prepare and over-perform just to feel safe, pause for a moment. Realize that you are listening to a ghost from your past. The silence you grew up with was never proof that you were unlovable. It was only proof that the people around you didn't know how to give what they didn't have. You can begin to quiet the echo by offering yourself the very warmth, patience, and validation that was missing back then, proving to that inner child that their presence is finally enough. To begin healing, we have to recognize when that unattended child is the one actually running the show in our adult lives. Your inner child doesn't speak to you in complete sentences. They don't use the logical, rational language of an adult. Instead, they speak to you through your sudden, intense emotional reactions. They communicate through the physical sensations that hijack your body out of nowhere. The sudden tightening in your chest, the hot flash of anger in your face, or the overwhelming urge to immediately pack your bags and run away from a situation. These are your triggers, and they are the breadcrumbs leading you straight back to the child who is still hurting. Think about a moment when a close friend cancels dinner plans at the last minute because they had an exhausting day at work. Logically, as an adult, you understand completely. You know they are tired. You know it isn't personal. And you might even have been a little tired yourself. But emotionally, logic completely flies out the window. You feel a sharp, burning rejection in your chest, a cold wave of shame that tells you that you aren't important to them. You find yourself retreating into a shell, text messaging a cold, formal reply like, "No problem," and deciding right then and there that you simply won't reach out to them again. That isn't your adult self reacting to a minor scheduling conflict. That is the kid who sat on the porch waiting for someone who forgot to pick them up, telling themselves that they will never trust anyone ever again. Or look at how this shows up in your professional life. Imagine you are sitting in a meeting, and a colleague politely disagrees with an idea you just shared. They aren't attacking you. They are just offering a different perspective. But inside your body, an alarm goes off. Your heart begins to race, your throat tightens, and you either freeze completely, unable to find your words, or you become intensely defensive, arguing your point with a fierce, desperate urgency. In that moment, you aren't just defending a project point. You are that little child who felt completely invisible at the dinner table, desperately trying to prove that your thoughts have value, that you are smart enough, and that you deserve to be heard. We walk through our adult lives thinking we are reacting to the present moment, but so often, we are just reacting to the ghosts of our past. When someone doesn't reply to your text for a few hours, and you immediately assume they are furious with you or are planning to leave you. That is the trigger. When someone uses a slightly sharp tone of voice and you feel a sudden, paralyzing urge to apologize over and over again just to keep the peace, that is the trigger. It is the little kid inside you trying to navigate an old, familiar danger with the only tools they had back then. Finding the child in these triggers means changing the way you look at your own emotional volatility. Instead of getting angry at yourself for being too sensitive or overreacting, you learn to view your triggers as an invitation. The next time you feel that intense, disproportionate wave of anxiety, anger, or loneliness, pause before you react. Take a slow breath and gently ask yourself, how old do I feel right now? 9 times out of 10, you will realize you don't feel like an adult. You feel like a helpless 7-year-old or a terrified teenager. Acknowledge that the kid inside you is crying out for attention, and they have been waiting a very long time for you to notice them. Carl Jung deeply understood this hidden internal split, the quiet fracturing that happens when we are forced to leave a piece of ourselves behind just to survive. He spent a lifetime looking at the deep structures of the human mind, and he realized that the past is never truly dead. It is simply waiting for us to return. He noted that in every adult there dwells the child, an eternal child, something that is always becoming, is never finished, and calls for unceasing care, attention, and education. That is the part of the human personality which wants to develop and become whole. Healing begins at the crossroad where your adult self meets this eternal child. For most of your life, you have probably been walking away from this crossroad. You have been running forward, chasing achievements, trying to build a perfect life, or staying as busy as possible so you never have to turn around and look at the pain following you. But no matter how fast you run or how successful you become, you cannot outrun a shadow. The crossroad is always there, waiting for the moment you finally run out of distractions and are forced to stand still in the quiet. It happens when you stop ignoring the discomfort and instead turn inward to look at it directly. Think about what it takes to actually stand at that crossroad. It requires an immense amount of bravery. It means that the next time you feel that familiar, overwhelming wave of anxiety or loneliness, instead of trying to push it away, turning on the television, or distracting yourself with a new task, you choose to sit with it. You choose to look into the darkness of your own internal world and acknowledge that the heavy feeling in your chest isn't a defect. It is a person. It is that little kid, bruised and tired, who has been carrying the weight of the family secrets, the silence, and the loneliness all by themselves. Imagine standing at that intersection of your past and your present. For the longest time, you might have looked back at your younger self with a sense of frustration or shame. You might have wished you were stronger, or louder, or different. But when you truly meet at the crossroad, the shame begins to melt away, replaced by a profound, heartbreaking wave of compassion. You look at that kid, and you realize they did absolutely nothing wrong. They didn't deserve the silence. They didn't deserve to be left unchecked. They were just a child, trying to figure out how to survive in a world that didn't make room for them. This meeting is the moment the internal civil war ends. It is the moment you stop trying to fix yourself and instead start trying to meet yourself. You realize that you cannot become whole by cutting off the parts of you that hurt. You can only become whole by pulling them close. The next time you feel the old ache rising to the surface, recognize it as an invitation to step onto the crossroad. Acknowledge that the kid inside you is crying out for attention, and they have been waiting a very long time for you to finally stop running, turn around, and say, "I see you. I am right here." Loving the child nobody checked on means learning how to become the protector you always needed, but never had. It means looking back at your younger self, not with pity or regret, but with a fierce, protective devotion. It means standing between that child and the harsh judgments of the world, and sometimes even your own harsh internal critic. For so long, you have spoken to yourself using the language of your neglect. You have been cold, demanding, and dismissive of your own pain, repeating the very patterns that wounded you in the first place. Learning the language of protection means changing that inner dialogue completely. Think about what a real protector does. A protector doesn't tell a crying child to get over it, to grow up, or to stop making a scene. A protector steps in, puts an arm around them, and creates a safe perimeter so they can catch their breath. To protect your inner child today, you have to start practicing this in your daily life. It looks like noticing when your body is entering a state of panic or exhaustion. And instead of pushing through it to please someone else, you step away. You become the shield. You tell the voice that says, "You aren't doing enough," to step back because right now, the little kid inside you just needs to know they are safe. Imagine walking into that quiet room from your childhood. Think of the exact age you were when you felt the most unseen, the most left behind. Walk down that old hallway, open the door, and look at that version of you sitting there, trying so hard to be strong and invisible. They are so small, and the weight they are carrying is so impossibly large. You don't need to offer them grand speeches, complicated solutions, or promises that the past didn't happen. You just need to show up. You need to close the distance between you, sit down on the floor right beside them, and let them look into your eyes. You need to speak to them with absolute certainty, using words they have waited a lifetime to hear. You look at them and say, "I see you. I see how hard you've been trying to hold everything together. I know how lonely it has been, and I know how much it hurt when they didn't check on you. But I want you to look at me. I am grown up now. I am strong, and I am never going to leave you behind again. You don't have to be the adult anymore. You don't have to carry this house on your shoulders. I am going to protect you now." When you speak these words, something shifts deep within your nervous system. The child inside you begins to realize that the long vigil is finally over. They don't have to stay hyper-vigilant, scanning the horizon for danger, or waiting for footsteps that will never come. The footsteps have finally arrived, and they belong to you. Learning this language means showing up for yourself consistently, day after day, proving through your actions that you are a reliable guardian. Every time you validate your own sadness, every time you choose your own peace over someone else's comfort, you are actively reparenting that kid, wrapping them in a fierce, unbreakable safety. When you begin to protect your inner child, your daily boundaries start to change. You stop allowing people to take advantage of your silence. You stop overextending your energy just to keep the peace or to keep people from leaving you. For a long time, you have been living by an old, painful script that was handed to you when you were small. That script said your worth was tied entirely to what you could do for others, how quiet you could be, and how little you could demand from the world. It taught you that you were only valuable when you were useful, when you were fixing a crisis, or when you were acting as someone else's emotional anchor. Rewriting that script means tearing up those old pages and deciding once and for all that you are worthy simply because you exist. Think about how this looks in practice. It looks like setting a firm boundary with a family member who constantly criticizes your lifestyle choices, your career, or your path. And instead of engaging in an exhausting argument to prove your value, you politely but firmly say, "I love you, but I'm not going to have this conversation anymore." You don't owe them an explanation. You don't need to win their approval to justify your life. By standing your ground, you are looking back at that little kid who used to take the blame for everything and saying, "We don't have to accept this anymore. We are allowed to be respected." It looks like allowing yourself to rest on a Saturday afternoon without feeling a crushing weight of guilt telling you that you aren't being productive enough. When you grow up unchecked, stagnation feels dangerous, and busyness becomes a shield. You feel like if you aren't constantly achieving, working, or fixing something, you are failing. But when you rewrite the script, you allow yourself to just sit. You look at the sky, you drink a warm cup of tea, and you let your body soften. You tell the anxious voice inside your head that your productivity does not dictate your right to breathe, to rest, and to be happy. Think about how this changes your relationships too. Rewriting the script means you stop accepting breadcrumbs of affection. You stop settling for people who only love you when it is convenient for them, or who only look your way when they need something. You start realizing that a real connection requires two people who see each other, not one person who gives everything and another who takes it all. You stop over-explaining your boundaries, and you stop apologizing for having basic human needs. You realize that if someone walks away because you started valuing yourself, their departure isn't a loss. It is a profound relief. You are rewriting the script, teaching that child that their worth is inherent, not something they have to constantly earn through sacrifice. You are showing them that they don't have to buy their place at the table with perfection. Every single time you say no to something that drains your soul. Every time you choose your own emotional well-being over someone else's expectations. And every time you look in the mirror and offer yourself words of gentleness instead of judgment, you are writing a new story. You are telling that little kid that they are cherished, that they are valuable, and that they are finally home. There is an extraordinary, quiet resilience hidden within the child who wasn't checked on. Because you had to navigate so much of the world entirely on your own, you had to find a way to survive the stillness. And in doing so, you developed a deep capacity for empathy, a profound intuition, and a unique way of seeing the world. You became incredibly sensitive to the unspoken pain in others. You can walk into a room and immediately notice the person who is sitting by themselves, the one who is smiling, but whose eyes look heavy, because you know exactly what that feels like. But for most of your life, you have used these beautiful gifts purely as a shield to keep yourself safe, or as a currency to buy the affection of people who didn't know how to value you. The beauty of the unchecked heart is that it survived despite the winter. It kept its capacity to love, to feel, and to hope, even when the soil it grew in was completely dry. But you no longer have to use your deep empathy just to predict danger or to protect yourself from abandonment. You can finally start turning that massive wave of understanding inward, directing it toward the one person who has needed it most: yourself. When you start validating your own feelings, the world begins to soften around you. You realize that you don't need to wait for a retrospective apology from the people who let you down in the past. You don't need the adults who ignored you to suddenly wake up, knock on your door, and give you the closure you have spent decades crying for. You stop holding your breath, waiting for them to change, because you finally realize they simply do not hold the power to heal you. They didn't have the capacity to see you then, and they may not have the capacity to see you now. But that no longer matters, because you see you. The unchecked heart begins to truly heal when it realizes it holds the key to its own cage. Think about how beautiful it is when you stop looking outward for permission to exist. It feels like a massive weight being lifted off your chest. You stop asking, "Am I doing this right?" Or, "Am I enough for them?" And you start asking, "Is this environment kind to my heart?" You begin to honor your own rhythms. If you feel sad, you let yourself cry without calling yourself weak. If you feel joyful, you let yourself laugh completely without waiting for the other shoe to drop. You allow your emotions to flow naturally, like water, instead of damming them up inside your body out of fear. This is the true beauty of your journey. The very part of you that was left in the dark, the soft, sensitive, emotional core that you tried so hard to hide because it felt like a liability, is actually your greatest strength. It is the compass that will guide you toward real, authentic connections. When you stop hiding your vulnerability and start loving your sensitive nature, You open the door for people to love the real you, not just the strong, capable mask you wear. You realize that your heart didn't break permanently in that quiet childhood room. It just went into hiding. And now that you are here to hold it, protect it, and cherish it, that heart is finally free to bloom out in the open, fully alive, fully seen, and deeply loved. This journey of self-discovery and healing isn't a straight line. It is not a path where you wake up one morning and suddenly everything from your past is completely erased, leaving you perfectly healed and untouched by the years of silence. There will still be days when the old loneliness creeps back into your chest out of nowhere, heavy and familiar. There will be moments when a sudden shift in someone's tone of voice, a brief delay in a response, or a distracted look from someone you care about makes you want to instantly shrink back into the wallpaper, hide your feelings, and pull the old armor back over your heart. But the profound, beautiful difference now is that you are no longer a helpless child left alone in a quiet room. You are not that little kid who has to handle the crushing weight of the world with tiny, trembling hands. You are an adult now. You are an adult with the power, the wisdom, the resilience, and the deep, unconditional love required to protect and heal your own life. You are the answer to that child's oldest prayer. Every single step you take towards setting a healthy boundary, every time you choose to speak kindly to yourself after making a mistake instead of letting the internal critic take over, you are keeping your promise. Every single time you pause during a stressful moment, place a hand over your heart, and take a slow, grounding breath, you are actively reparenting that kid. You are looking back at that younger version of you, reaching across the years to hold out your hand and walking forward into the future together, safe, protected, and finally, deeply cherished. Think about what it means to truly walk forward together. It means you don't leave that child behind in the past as a painful memory you try to forget. Instead, you bring them with you into the sunlight. You let them share in your joy. When you look at a beautiful sunset, when you allow yourself to laugh until your stomach hurts, or when you finally sink into a safe, loving embrace, you let that little kid feel it too. You let them realize that the world can be warm, that people can be trusted, and that it is finally safe to let their guard down. You are building a life that is wide enough, soft enough, and strong enough to hold both your adult responsibilities and your inner child's delicate sensitivity. You have spent so many years believing that because nobody checked on you, you were somehow broken or unlovable. But look at you now. You are here, listening to these words, doing the brave and necessary work of healing a wound you did not cause. That is not the mark of someone who is broken. That is the mark of a deeply resilient, courageous, and beautiful soul. The silence of your past no longer has the power to define the volume of your future. As we step out of this space today, take that feeling of safety with you. Keep holding that kid's hand tightly in yours. You have spent long enough waiting for someone to open the door and save you. You have finally become your own savior, your own protector, and your own home. The door is wide open now, the hallway is bright, and you never have to sit in that quiet room alone again. You are walking forward together, and you are going to be completely okay. If you could reach back through the fabric of time, past the decades, past the moves, the heartbreaks, and the quiet milestones, what would you say to the child who thought they were invisible? We spend so much of our adult lives waiting for a letter that will never arrive. We wait for an acknowledgement from the people who raised us, an apology from an ex-partner who took our silence for granted, or a sign from the universe that our struggle has been seen. But the most liberating secret of healing is that the validation you have been starving for cannot be granted by the outside world. The letter you have been waiting for is one you have to write to yourself. Imagine sitting down at a wooden table on a quiet evening, the warmth of a mug between your hands, and finally putting pen to paper. This isn't a lecture, and it isn't a list of instructions. It is a simple, emotional transmission from the person you are today to the child who survived the silence. Dear you, I know you are sitting in that room right now, listening to the hum of the house, wondering what you did wrong. I can see the tightness in your small shoulders and the way you hold your breath whenever the front door opens, trying to guess the mood of the adults before they even speak. I know how much your chest aches when you realize that everyone is too busy, too tired, or too wrapped up in their own storms to look at you. I know you've already decided to stop asking for help. I know you've promised yourself that you will never cry where anyone can see you, and that you will become so strong, so perfect, and so useful that they will have no choice but to love you. I am writing this to tell you that you can finally stop trying so hard. You don't have to carry the weight of this family on your back. You don't have to patch up the cracks in the walls or fix the heavy adult sadness that hangs in the air. None of it is your fault. Your sensitivity isn't a defect, and your need for comfort isn't a burden. You are not invisible because you lack worth. You are invisible because the people around you forgot how to open their eyes. I want you to know that I see you. I see the quit bravery it takes for you to wake up every morning and face a house that feels so empty. I see the creative ways you soothe your own fears, the stories you make up in your head to keep yourself company, and the fierce loyalty you have hidden inside your heart. You think you are completely alone, but I am standing right here in the future, looking back at you with so much pride. You are going to survive this. You are going to grow up, and you are going to build a life out of the bricks of your own resilience. But more than anything, I want to promise you this. I am taking over now. You don't have to be the adult anymore. You don't have to protect yourself from the silence, because I am here to be your shield. When the world is too loud, I will give you a quiet place to rest. When people demand too much from you, I will be the one who stands up and says no on your behalf. I am going to buy you the things you were denied, give you the rest you never got, and protect your soft heart with a fierce, unbreakable devotion. You are safe now. The long night is over, and I am never going to let go of your hand. With all my love, the person you became. When you read these words, let them sink deep into your skin. Feel the physical shift that happens when you stop outsourcing your worth to people who don't have the capacity to give it to you. The healing journey doesn't erase the scars of your childhood, but it changes your relationship to them. Those old wounds stop being a source of constant, bleeding shame, and instead become the sacred ground where your true strength was born. Think about the incredible journey your heart has taken to get to this exact moment. You were left unchecked in a cold environment, yet you did not turn cold. You were denied emotional warmth, yet you grew up to possess a capacity for empathy that can light up a room. You were taught that your voice didn't matter, yet here you are, listening, feeling, and reclaiming your right to be heard. That is not a story of defeat. That is a masterpiece of human survival. As you close this chapter and walk back into the rhythm of your daily life, remember that loving your inner child is a daily, living practice. It is found in the ordinary choices you make every single hours. It is in the moment you choose to eat a nourishing meal because your body deserves care. It is in the moment you crawl into bed early because you are exhausted, refusing to apologize to the voice that demands endless productivity. It is in the gentle way you talk to yourself when you drop a glass, make a mistake at work, or feel a wave of anxiety that you can't explain. Every act of self-directed kindness is a whisper through time, reaching back into that quiet room and lighting a candle in the dark. You are the author of the new script. The people who missed your childhood cannot rewrite the beginning of your story, but they have absolutely no say in how it ends. You have held your breath for long enough. Take a deep, final breath in. Feel the air filling your lungs and let it out with a sigh of absolute relief. You are seen. You are protected. You are home.